Welcome to Natural Health Talk, your go-to podcast for all things related to holistic wellness, natural remedies, and living a balanced, healthy lifestyle. Be sure to visit our sponsor, TopNaturalHealth.com, for special promo code pricing on all of the products mentioned in our episodes.
Okay, so are you ready to dive into a topic that just might hold the secrets to a longer, healthier life?
Well, that sounds pretty enticing. What exactly are we talking about today?
Today's deep dive is all about trans-resveratrol.
Resveratrol. I've heard that word thrown around. Isn't that the stuff in red wine?
You're on the right track. It's found in grapes, wine, and some plants too. But we're going beyond just a casual sip of Cabernet.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
What's got you so interested in trans-resveratrol specifically?
Well, we're looking at this article from TopNaturalHealth.com, and let me tell you, they are really excited about it. They're calling it a miracle molecule, a fountain of youth, the whole 9 yards.
Oh boy, those are some bold claims, and they probably just happen to be selling a supplement too, right?
You know it. They're really pushing a brand called GenuinePurity. But before we jump into all that, let's rewind a bit. For anyone who isn't familiar, what exactly is trans-resveratrol?
Well, in the simplest terms, it's a natural compound. You'll find it in things like grapes, wine, certain plants. The article really focuses on the trans form, though, because apparently that's the one that actually has an impact on the body.
Trans is where it's at. Got it. Now, the article starts off strong. They're talking about the French paradox. You know, how the French have relatively low rates of heart disease, even though they eat all that cheese and buttery pastries.
Right, I've heard about that. They're basically implying that red wine, which has resveratrol, is the magic bullet, huh?
Exactly. They're really playing up that connection. But I'm sure you'll agree that's a pretty big leap to make. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one actually causes the other, right?
You're absolutely right. That's a classic example of correlation, not causation. It's like saying everyone who wears striped socks on Wednesdays is a brilliant musician. Some might be, but the socks have nothing to do with it. There are tons of other factors that could contribute to the French paradox: genetics, overall lifestyle. Maybe they're just happier people.
Or maybe it's all the leisurely lunches.
Yeah.
But you're right, blaming it solely on resveratrol is a bit of a stretch.
Exactly. It's a nice story, but we need to see some hard evidence before we jump on the bandwagon.
Especially when health claims are involved. Speaking of which, this article doesn't hold back. They're saying trans-resveratrol is the key to everything from a healthy heart and better blood sugar control to a longer lifespan and sharper brain function.
Wow. They're really pulling out all the stops, aren't they? Painting it as a cure-all, which we always have to be a little skeptical of.
Right, we can't just take their word for it. They even toss around phrases like clinically proven, especially when talking about this GenuinePurity brand. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, what should our listeners keep in mind when they see these kinds of phrases, especially when they're connected to a product that's being sold?
It's like seeing a flashy ad online. It's designed to grab your attention, but you always want to read the fine print. Anytime you see those buzzwords, especially if they don't have specific evidence to back them up, that's your signal to put on your critical thinking cap.
Love it. Critical thinking, our listeners' secret weapon. So let's break down these claims one by one. The article starts with cardiovascular health. They're talking about how resveratrol supposedly boosts nitric oxide production, which helps relax blood vessels and improve blood flow. Sounds promising, but what's the research actually say about that?
Okay, so nitric oxide definitely plays a role in healthy circulation, that's true. And there have actually been a few studies, some published in reputable sources, that suggest resveratrol might actually contribute to its production.
Okay, so it's not completely outlandish.
No, but here's the catch. A lot of these studies are still in the early stages. They might be small, done in cells or animals. We need more research, especially large-scale human trials, before we can confidently say whether those findings translate into real-world benefits.
So, promising but not a done deal just yet. Let's move on to blood sugar regulation. The article claims that resveratrol can improve insulin sensitivity, which is super important for managing blood sugar levels, especially for people with type 2 diabetes. They even throw in the scientific term AMP-activated protein kinase, or AMPK. I'll admit, I had to look that one up.
Don't worry, you don't need a PhD in biochemistry to follow along. AMPK is basically like a sensor in your cells, kind of like a fuel gauge, that helps regulate energy use and how your body reacts to insulin. There's some research suggesting that resveratrol might be able to influence this AMPK activity, which, in theory, could potentially improve how your body uses glucose.
So there's a potential connection there, but again, more research is key.
Exactly. And it's important to be clear, even if future research confirms this link, it doesn't mean resveratrol is a magic bullet for diabetes. It's likely just one piece of a much larger puzzle, along with things like diet, exercise, and other medical treatments.
Right. It's about the whole picture, not just a quick fix.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about longevity. They make it sound like trans-resveratrol is the ticket to a longer lifespan. They even talk about how in studies on yeast, worms, and mice, it seemed to extend their lifespans. They focus on this thing called AAShe, a protein linked to aging. But can we really compare those results to humans? I mean, we're a bit more complicated than a worm, right?
That's the million-dollar question. And you're right, there are some pretty significant leaps being made there. While those animal studies are definitely interesting, they don't automatically mean we should all load up on resveratrol hoping to live to 150. It's early research, and we need more, particularly in humans, to actually understand what it all means.
So maybe hold off on planning that 150th birthday party for now. What about cognitive function? I mean, who doesn't want a sharper brain? They mentioned trans-resveratrol, improving memory, boosting mood, even increasing the production of something called BDNF.
BDNF, that's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's like miracle grow for your brain cells, helping them grow and stay healthy. And you're right, there have been some studies, even a few involving humans, that suggest resveratrol might have some positive effects on cognitive function, potentially by influencing these BDNF levels.
So there's that glimmer of hope again, but I'm sensing a however coming on.
You know me too well. As exciting as those early findings are, we need much more research to really understand the long-term impact of resveratrol on cognitive health in humans.
Okay, so we've talked about heart health, blood sugar, longevity, even brain power. The article also mentions anti-inflammatory and antioxidant benefits, which kind of feel like a given with all this talk about fighting free radicals. Anything you need to unpack there, or are we good to move on?
It's true that resveratrol, just by being an antioxidant, has the potential to help combat inflammation and oxidative stress, both of which are linked to a whole host of health issues. And the article does cite some research in this area.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Right. Inflammation is complex, and popping a supplement doesn't suddenly make you invincible.
It's about more than just a pill a day.
Exactly. It's about the bigger picture, your diet, your lifestyle, any other health conditions you might have.
Speaking of the bigger picture, they do slip in a quick mention, almost like an afterthought, that taking really high doses of resveratrol over 2.5 grams has been linked to some negative side effects, like an upset stomach. Interesting how they bury that little tidbit while heavily promoting their specific brand and its dosage.
That's a really good point. They acknowledge potential downsides, but then quickly pivot back to their product, claiming it provides this clinically proven dosage of 500 milligrams. But as we've been discussing, you always have to be cautious with these grand statements. What research are they basing this dosage on? Are those studies independent, or are they funded by the company selling the supplement? Those are questions we should always ask.
Great point. Don't just take their word for it, question everything.
And that's where things get really interesting, right? Because they're really leaning into their brand now, GenuinePurity.
Yeah, they're laying it on pretty thick, and I'm curious to see if it holds up to the scrutiny.
Exactly. So their first selling point, this 98% purity, they're making it sound like that's a really big deal. But is it?
It does sound impressive, like you're getting the top shelf stuff.
Right. And to be fair, the purity of a supplement, it's important. You don't want a bunch of extra junk in there. You want to know what you're putting into your body. Ideally, you want the good stuff and minimal fillers or additives. However, without knowing what other brands are putting out there, it's really hard to say if 98% is actually exceptional or if it's just standard practice for trans-resveratrol.
Right, so it's like saying a car gets you from point A to point B. Well, yeah, but that doesn't tell me if it's a gas-guzzling SUV or a fuel-efficient little hybrid. We need a little more context.
Exactly. Don't get swayed by a big number alone. Look for some transparency, right? How's it sourced? What about their manufacturing process? Those things matter.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, their second big selling point, this liposomal encapsulation technology. They claim this makes their supplement way more absorbable. It's supposed to go straight into your bloodstream. I have to admit, I was intrigued, but I'm also a little skeptical.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting from a scientific standpoint. So imagine you're sending a super fragile package through the mail.
Okay, like vintage vinyl or something. Got to be careful with those.
Exactly. You wouldn't just toss it in a flimsy paper envelope and hope for the best, right?
Definitely not. You'd want it packaged really well.
Exactly. You'd want the bubble wrap, maybe sturdy box, the whole 9 yards. So that's kind of what liposomal encapsulation does for supplements. Liposomes, think of them as tiny little bubbles made from the same stuff as our cell membranes. And they encapsulate the supplement, the trans-resveratrol in this case, and protect it, helping it get past all those harsh environments in our digestive system and reach the bloodstream more effectively.
So instead of getting lost in transit, it gets a first-class ticket straight to its destination.
That's a great way to put it. And there is some actual science behind it. Liposomal encapsulation has been studied. They're looking at its potential to enhance the absorption of different drugs and nutrients. However, it's not a foolproof system by any means. Its effectiveness can really vary depending on the specific liposomal formulation, the dosage, even individual differences in our biology.
So it's promising, but it's not a guarantee that everyone's going to absorb it better.
Exactly. It's like with any new technology, it's got potential, but we need more research to fully understand its limitations as well as its capabilities.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, their last big claim is their clinically proven dosage, 500 milligrams. We touched on this before, but it's worth another look. What, if any, evidence are they providing to back up this specific dosage?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because they make that bold statement, but when you actually look closer at the article, they don't give us any studies to look at. It's possible that 500 milligrams IS an effective dose, and that there IS research out there, but without those references, we're just left wondering.
So it's kind of like they're saying, trust us, this is the perfect amount, but they're not showing us the recipe.
Exactly. And remember, what's clinically proven for one person might not be the same for another. It varies from person to person. Age, health status, why you're even taking the supplement, it all plays a role.
Right, so there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to dosage. Just like how some people thrive on 7 hours of sleep and others need 9.
That's a great analogy. It's all about figuring out what your body needs. And that's where, again, talking to your doctor or registered dietitian is so, so important.
Always good advice. Now, I did notice they mentioned their trans-resveratrol is from Japanese knotweed. Is that something to write home about?
You're right, they did mention that. And actually, Japanese knotweed, it's one of the plants that has the highest concentrations of resveratrol. However, and this is interesting, they don't really go into any detail about their extraction methods or even any quality control measures. It's kind of like if you told me a cake was made with butter, but I don't know if it's a high-quality grass-fed butter or not. It's still butter, but...
The source matters.
Exactly. And as savvy consumers, it's something we should be paying attention to.
Okay, so we've broken down the claims, dug into some of the science, and put on our skeptical thinking caps. Let's bring it all together now for our listeners. If you're thinking about adding a trans-resveratrol supplement to your routine, especially this GenuinePurity one they're promoting, what are the key takeaways you should remember?
First and foremost, remember those buzzwords we talked about earlier? Clinically proven, miracle molecule, all that jazz. Those are always a bit of a red flag. While there is research out there and there are some potential benefits, a lot of it is still very early and needs further study, particularly in humans.
So be cautiously optimistic, but don't put all your eggs in one basket just yet.
Exactly. And this is so important, and I can't stress it enough. Always, always talk to your doctor or a qualified healthcare professional before you start taking any new supplement. This is especially important if you have any pre-existing health conditions or are taking medications, because there could be interactions. Supplements aren't regulated the same way as pharmaceuticals, so that guidance from your healthcare provider is crucial.
Be proactive. Advocate for your own health.
Yeah.
Your body, right?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Do your research. Make those informed decisions that are right for you.
So basically, a healthy dose of skepticism is never a bad thing. Don't just take this article at face value. Use it as a springboard to do your own digging.
You got it. Look for those studies they mention. Check, are they peer-reviewed? Are they from reputable sources? And pay attention to who funded the research. Was it independent, or was it funded by the company that's selling the supplement?
Good point. It's always good to know who's footing the bill for the research, right?
Yeah.
Like checking reviews before you book a hotel or try a new restaurant.
Exactly. You want the full picture, not just a carefully curated snapshot.
All right, so be informed, be discerning, and talk to your doctor.
Got it. Now, this article focuses on trans-resveratrol as a supplement, but I'm curious. This article focuses on trans-resveratrol as a supplement, but I was thinking, what about getting it naturally? They mentioned red wine grapes.
Oh, yeah.
Could those actually offer?
It's a great question, and I think it's something we should always be asking ourselves, right? Like, can I get this from food?
Right.
So while red wine and grapes do contain resveratrol, the concentrations are much, much lower than what you'd find in a supplement.
So like you'd have to drink gallons of wine or eat barrels of grapes.
Yeah, you'd probably get tired of the grapes way before you hit any significant amount of resveratrol.
Yeah, true.
And plus, we can't forget about all the other stuff that comes along with those foods, right?
Right, like the alcohol in the wine, the sugar in the grapes. Exactly. So red wine, even though it's touted as potentially heart healthy in moderation, it does have alcohol, which has its own risks.
Right.
And grapes, while they're full of antioxidants and nutrients, they're also pretty high in sugar.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as simple as saying like, oh, I'll just swap out the supplement for, a wine and cheese diet every day.
Right, exactly. Moderation is key, as with everything, pretty much.
Exactly.
It sounds like just relying on food alone for trans-resveratrol might not be the most effective strategy.
Right. And I think that's where, again, going back to talking to your doctor or registered dietitian can be really, really helpful because they can help you make those decisions for your own individual needs, your diet, your lifestyle, whether a supplement is even necessary or appropriate for you.
Right, get that personalized advice.
Yep.
So basically, if you're intrigued by this whole trans-resveratrol thing, you want to make informed decisions about your health, and maybe you enjoy a little detective work. What's our advice?
I love that you framed it as a detective story because that's really what it is.
It is.
Don't just take this article at face value. Be curious, ask questions, and do your own digging, Look for those clinical studies that they mention. Check. Are they peer-reviewed? Are they from reputable sources? Pay attention to who funded the research because that can sometimes, clue you in on potential biases. And then most importantly, have that conversation with your healthcare provider. They can give you personalized advice based on your own individual needs and your health history.
Love it. Become an empowered advocate for your own well-being. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll have all the answers about longevity, but until then, we'll keep diving deep into the world of science and health, separating the hype from the hope. And as always, we want to hear from you.
Absolutely. What really stood out to you in this deep dive? Are there any other health topics you'd like us to explore?
Yeah, tell us. You can find us on our website. You can connect with us on social media. Until next time, stay curious.
From all of us here at Natural Health Talk, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and don't forget to visit our sponsor, TopNaturalHealth.com, for special promo code pricing on all of the products mentioned in this episode.